Happy Friday, May 1st, guys. It's the 1st of May, which is amazing and so surreal, right? Are you guys thinking how crazy it is that we're already into May? I am. Wow. I can't believe it. And it's on a Friday, which is kind of better for some reason. I don't know why, but it just seems way more exciting that the first day of May, which is getting all this summery weather and late spring weather, that it's a Friday on top of that. So we're going into the weekend strong into May. So today we're just going to do first chapter Friday. Obviously you should be working on your papers and because those are due on Monday, May 4th. But today is just going to be no new assignments or anything, of course. And we are going to be going into our first chapter Friday. It's going to be Hillbilly Elegy. So, as you can see, Mrs. Imlay made this because she makes all the first chapter Friday things because it was her idea. So, nice shout out to Mrs. Imlay for making this. So, Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis. So, from a former Marine and Yale Law School graduate, a powerful account of growing up in a poor Rust Belt town that offers a broader, probing look at the struggles of America's white working class. So that's interesting, and if you want to go a little more background detail, there it is. And there's the author, and apparently he also grew up in the Rust Belt city of Middletown, Ohio, so he's probably taking from his own experiences, because it looks like he also attended Yale Law School, so... Oh, actually, I think it might be... Oh, it's a memoir, so it's actually a memoir. Memoir meaning that a memoir doesn't always, when it says, like, for instance, Memoir of a Geisha, that's not actually written by a real geisha. But this one actually is, so it's based off of his life, his family, the Vance family story. So that is really cool. And then if you're also interested in this book, Heartland, a memoir of working hard and being broke in the richest country on earth by Sarah Marsh. Educated by Tara Westgrove, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. I've heard a lot of good reviews about that one. The Other Wes Moore, One Name, Two Fates by Wes Moore. Before We Were Yours, a novel by Lisa Wingate, and The Line Becomes a River, Dispatches from the Border by Francisco Cantu. So there's a little background. We're going to read the first chapter of it, and that will be all for today. So, I just wanted to see. Okay, so this is the big introduction. But I want to actually read the first chapter. If you want to go back, obviously, and read the introduction, you guys have this link on the daily schedule page, so feel free to. But I wanted this to be the real first chapter Friday, so let's get into it. Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis by J.D. Vance. And he wrote it in 2016, or at least it was published in 2016. Chapter 1. Like most small children, I learned my home address so that if I got lost, I could tell a grown-up where to take me. In kindergarten, when the teacher asked me where I lived, I could recite the address without skipping a beat, even though my mother changed addresses frequently, for reasons I never understood as a child. Still, I always distinguished my address from my home. My address was where I spent most of my time with my mother and sister, wherever that might be. But my home never changed. My great-grandmother's house in the Holler in Jackson, Kentucky. Jackson is a small town of about 6,000 in the heart of southeastern Kentucky's coal country. Calling it a town is a bit charitable. There's a courthouse, a few restaurants, almost all of them fast food chains, and a few other shops and stores. Most of the people live in the mountains surrounding Kentucky Highway 15, in trailer parks, in government subsidized housing, in small farmhouses, and in mountain homesteads like the one that served as the backdrop for the fondest memories of my childhood. Jacksonians say hello to everyone, willingly skipped their favorite pastimes to dig a stranger's car out of the snow, and without exception stop their cars, get out, and stand at attention every time a funeral motorcade drives past. It was that latter practice that made me aware of something special about Jackson and its people. Why, I'd ask my grandma, whom we all called Mama, did everyone stop for the passing hearse? Because, honey, we're hill people, and we respect our dead. My grandparents left Jackson in the late 1940s and raised their family in Middleton, Ohio, where I later grew up. But until I was 12, I spent my summers and much of the rest of the time in Jackson. I'd visit along with Mama, who wanted to see friends and family, ever conscious that time was shortening the list of her favorite people. And as time wore on, we made our trips for one reason above all, to take care of Mama's mother, whom we called Mama Blanton, to distinguish her, though somewhat confusingly, from Mama. We stayed with Mama Blanton in the house where she'd lived before her husband left to fight the Japanese in the Pacific. Mama Blanton's house was my favorite place in the world, though it was neither large nor luxurious. The house had 3 bedrooms. In the front were a small porch, a porch swing, and a large yard that stretched into a mountain on one side and to the head of the holler on the other. Though Mama Blanton owned some property, most of it was uninhabitable foliage. There wasn't a backyard to speak of, though there was a beautiful mountainside of rock and tree. There was always the holler and the creek that ran alongside it. Those were backyard enough. The kids all slept in a single upstairs room, a squad bay of about a dozen beds where my cousins and I played into the night until our irritated grandma would frighten us into sleep. The surrounding mountains were paradise to a child, and I spent much of my time terrorizing the Appalachian fauna. No turtle, snake, frog, fish, or squirrel was safe. I'd run around with my cousins, unaware of the ever-present poverty or Mama Blanton's deteriorating health. At a deep level, Jackson was the one place that belonged to me, my sister, and Mama. I loved Ohio, but it was full of painful memories. In Jackson, I was the grandson of the toughest woman anyone knew and the most skilled auto mechanic in town. In Ohio, I was the abandoned son of a man I hardly knew and a woman I wish I didn't. Mom visited Kentucky only for the annual family reunion or the occasional funeral, and when she did, Mama made sure she brought none of the drama. In Jackson, there would be no screaming, no fighting, no beating up on my sister, and especially no men. As Mama would say, Mama hated Mom's various love interests and allowed none of them in Kentucky. In Ohio, I had grown especially skillful at navigating various father figures. With Steve, a midlife crisis sufferer with an earring to prove it, I pretended earrings were cool, so much so that he thought it appropriate to pierce my ear too. With Chip, an alcoholic police officer who saw my earring as a sign of girliness, I had thick skin and loved police cars. With Ken, an odd man who proposed to Mom 3 days into their relationship, I was a kind brother to his 2 children. But none of these things were really true. I hated earrings, I hated police cars, and I knew that Ken's children would be out of my life by the next year. In Kentucky, I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't, because the only men in my life, my grandmother's brothers and brothers-in-law, already knew me. Did I want to make them proud? Of course I did, but not because I pretended to like them. I genuinely loved them. The oldest and meanest of the Blanton men was Uncle T-Berry, nicknamed for his favorite flavor of chewing gum. Uncle T-Berry, like his father, served in the Navy during World War II. He died when I was 4, so I have only 2 real memories of him. In the first, I'm running for my life, and T-Berry is close behind with a switchblade, assuring me that he'll feed my right ear to the dogs if he catches me. I leap into Mama Blanton's arm, and the terrifying game is over. But I know that I loved him, because my second memory is of throwing such a fit over not being allowed to visit him on his deathbed that my grandma was forced to don a hospital robe and smuggle me in. I remember clinging to her underneath that hospital robe, but I don't remember saying goodbye. Uncle Pet came next. Uncle Pet was a tall man with a biting wit and a raunchy sense of humor. The most economically successful of the Blanton crew, Uncle Pet left home early and started some timber and construction business that made him enough money to race horses in his spare time. He seemed the nicest of the Blanton men, with the smooth charm of a successful businessman. But the charm masked a fierce temper. Once when a truck driver delivered supplies to one of Uncle Pet's businesses, he told my old hillbilly uncle, "Offload this now, you son of a bitch." Uncle Pet took the comment literally. "When you say that, you're calling my dear old mother a bitch, so I'd kindly ask you speak more carefully." When the driver, nicknamed Big Red because of his size and hair color, repeated the insult, Uncle Pet did what any rational business owner would do. He pulled the man from his truck, beat him unconscious, and ran an electric saw up and down his body. Big Red nearly bled to death, but was rushed to the hospital and survived. Uncle Pet never went to jail, though. Apparently, Big Red was also an Appalachian man, and he refused to speak to the police about the incident or press charges. He knew what it meant to insult a man's mother. Uncle David may have been the only one of Mama's brother to care little for that honor culture. An old rebel with long flowing hair and a longer beard, he loved everything but rules, which might explain why, when I found his giant marijuana plant in the backyard of the old homestead, he didn't try to explain it away. Shocked, I asked Uncle David what he planned to do with illegal drugs. So he got some cigarette papers and a lighter and showed me. I was 12. I knew if Mama ever found out, she'd kill him. I feared this because, according to family lore, Mama had nearly killed a man. When she was around 12, Mama walked outside to see two men loading the family's cow, a prized possession in a world without running water, into the back of a truck. She ran inside, grabbed a rifle, and fired a few rounds. One of the men collapsed, the result of a shot to the leg, and the other jumped into the truck and squealed away. The would-be thief could barely crawl, so Mama approached him, raised the business end of her rifle to the man's head, and prepared to finish the job. Luckily for him, Uncle Pet intervened. Mama's first confirmed kill would have to wait for another day. Even knowing what a pistol-packing lunatic Mama was, I find this story hard to believe. I polled members of my family, and about half had never heard the story. The part I believe is that she would have murdered the man if someone hadn't stopped her. She loathed disloyalty, and there was no greater disloyalty than class betrayal. Each time someone stole a bike from our porch, 3 times by my count, or broke into her car and took the loose change, or stole a delivery, she'd tell me, like a general giving his troops marching orders, "There is nothing lower than the poor stealing from the poor. It's hard enough as it is. We sure as hell don't need to make it even harder on each other." Youngest of all the Blanton boys was Uncle Gary. He was the baby of the family and one of the sweetest men I knew. Uncle Gary left home young and built a successful roofing business in Indiana. A good husband and a better father, he'd always say to me, "We're proud of you, old J-Dot," causing me to swell with pride. He was my favorite, the only Blanton brother not to threaten me with a kick in the ass or a detached ear. My grandma also had 2 younger sisters, Betty and Rose, whom I loved each very much, but I was obsessed with the Blanton men. I would sit among them and beg them to tell and retell their stories. Those men were the gatekeepers to the family's oral tradition, and I was their best student. Most of this tradition was far from child appropriate. Almost all of it involved the kind of violence that should land someone in jail. Much of it centered on how the country in which Jackson was situated, Breathitt, earned its alliterative nickname, Bloody Breathitt. There was many explanations, but they all had one theme. The people of Breathitt hated certain things, and they didn't need the law to snuff them out. Okay, so my video is about to end, so if you want to read the rest of the chapter, go ahead. This is a pretty long first chapter. So if you want to continue on reading, the link is on our daily schedule page, and I hope you enjoyed the beginning of this. This is the first nonfiction piece that we've read on First Chapter Friday. I love nonfiction. Mostly I prefer reading nonfiction of people I'm familiar with, like famous people, but this was very interesting as well. So I hope you have a good weekend, and happy May again, and I'll see you on Monday when your paper is due. Have a good day.